What do you say to people who say, Dr. Kevorkian, you are playing God?
Well, so is a doctor who takes your heart from one body and puts it in another, isn't he? A doctor always plays God, even when he gives you a pill, because he's interfering with a natural process.
He was a doctor of medicine.
Yes.
Pathology?
A pathologist, yes. Because the reason he chose to be a pathologist was because he didn't want to just be stuck in one area. He wanted to be able to cover a lot of areas. So if he was working in pathology, he would have access to people with cancer or people with something else. So he would have contact with everyone.
But at some point, as a pathologist, he's looking at, you're analyzing why people died, right? I mean, isn't that what a pathologist does?
Well, no, they do testing and, you go to a pathologist to figure out what's wrong. Information understood is knowledge. Knowledge information is wisdom. And he thought the more you know, that's what you do.
You had multiple discussions with him while he was in prison. Did he have any, I'm assuming he did not have any regrets having been there? What were those conversations like with him?
Well, you have to remember, he was in jail for almost 9 years.
Right.
I saw more of Michigan than I'd seen in my 40 years living in Michigan. He was in 9 different prisons because what they do is to move people around so they don't get too many friends in one place and too many friends in another place. And, he just carried on. He read extensively, and I went in to see him almost every 2 or 3 weeks. And what he accomplished in the prison was amazing. He wrote his books, Limericks. I gave you a copy of Limericks.
Right, you did.
He put together, this is an anthology.
And I read through it. Some of it is beyond me, to be honest with you. I mean, it's so intellectualized.
Poetry.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Cynicism is an unpleasant way of saying the truth. So much is painted about the beauty of life that the negative dark side is neglected. So I just instinctively did it just to startle.
Do you think that he was vindicated in any sense after all was said and done?
I think the fact that he survived this is amazing because he was right. And one of the jurors that was excused in one of the cases where he was working with Figer and was acquitted, he said the only thing that this man is guilty of is being ahead of his time. And I think that has proved to be the case. Mm-hmm. And he just said, do not be afraid, and do not be afraid of what other people think of you. And I think that is the memory of Jack, is that he was never afraid. This little tiny thin man, I don't think he weighed 115 pounds, but he was never afraid. I like the statement, the more you are, the less you need. He didn't need anything. When we went out to lunch, and we had a number of friends that we would, once he got out, we would go out to lunch. Of course, he'd have to go to Coley Island, though it was cheap. And there was a place in Royal Oak called Herman's, because you can get coffee for 50 cents. Mm-hmm. And then we would split senior meals. Figure that, you hardly get anything to eat when you're splitting that. But that's that tiny, tight little writing. He's not going to waste your money. So the statement, the more you are, the less you need. Brilliant, brilliant man. I don't know whether it's common that everyone is aware that he was an artist. We know he was a musician. He was a writer. He wrote all of these different books. This man spoke 7 languages. So he did basically all the Romance language. And when he was in the army, they would call this guy in as an interpreter. He served in Korea. He was an inventor. Anybody who can invent a suicide machine. He had bicycles that go on water, and he called himself a dabbler. So he would dabble in things. And as I said, he fixed everything that was broken in this house, which was great. And then he had, this amazing ability to do medical research. And he wrote, many, many things on medical research. He thought that anybody who put a person to death, he thought that it would be a good idea to ask if you're going to, and I know that there isn't a lot of death penalties now, but if you're going to put somebody to death, wouldn't it be nice if somebody needed a heart or a liver or something? that person be given an option. If you're going to kill the person, now we might go, oh my gosh, Jack, that's terrible. No, I think it was just a thought that you can make the world a better place. Save somebody else's life is what he wanted to do.
Myself as an Armenian, we have some pride in our own nationality, and that's why, I've cited so many people, so many Armenians, I should say, who've achieved success and greatness in what they do. Not to delineate Armenians from anybody else, but with your own nationality, you have some pride. I don't know that many Armenians would take solace in the fact that Jack was in fact some kind of a heroic personality for coming out the way that he did. And then it raises controversy, of course. Your own personal belief regarding any of this, did you have any thought process about what he was doing and what this is relative to a public who regarded him as Dr. Death, this guy that was putting people away? Voluntarily, these people wanted to be put away. I'm asking you.
Did I approve of what he was doing?
Yes, that's what I'm asking you.
No, I do not want the government telling me how to live my life. And I think that, of course, is a big factor right now, with the right to choose in terms of a woman's right to choose. So I don't want any government telling me. So I don't want them to say, how I die. And I think that it was my belief that everyone gets to choose how to live and how to die. And I respected Jack's opinion that you do have the opinion to be able to make those decisions for yourself.
Instead of being called Dr. Death, which does sound so very extreme and so very ghoulish,
Yes.
isn't there something you would prefer being called?
Well, I will one day.
What do you think you will be called then?
When society reaches the age of enlightenment, then they'll call me and other doctors Dr. Life.
So I never found this as ghoulish or anything like that. I think he was fighting, again, we go back to the 14th Amendment. If it's not listed, it's your right, and you get to make those determinations.
But what put him away was the last episode of these somehow 130 people that he had helped.
Right. Right.
But it was this last thing with Wallace in the 60-minute thing. And Jack had pushed the plunger himself.
Yes.
Prior to that, he did not, as far as you know.
No.
And he would tell you, I didn't do that. They did it.
I never asked him about it, but the way he set it up is that basically the person went to sleep, and they stopped breathing. I think that's what if you're taking morphine at the end of your life or something like that.
Right.
That's what it is. So medically, I don't know what the process was, but it was only when he went, he sent the tape to Mike Wallace, fit it in. And I just should say something about Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace adored him, and that was one of the privileges that in all the visits to all of these different facilities, that I would come home from the prison, having spent 3 or 4 hours with Jack, however long it was. Mike Wallace always wanted me to check in with him and just give him an update, because I think he felt guilty that Jack went to jail because it was shown. But Jack probably would have found somebody else to show it if Mike Wallace had. But I have so much respect for Mike Wallace, and we became very good friends, because I would talk to him every time I drove home from one of the prisons, just to give him an update on Jack. And Jack just kept himself going. He was absolutely amazing.
And he had so much media publicity, which is ironic considering the fact that the media was not a friendly bystander on all this. He was in Time Magazine, CNN, 60 Minutes, and
there he is.
There he is, yeah.
Yes. Somebody sent this to me because, actually, I think we might have a copy of that. Somebody wanted to know if that was his handwriting on the bottom of that page. I had a copy of that. And so he was in the centerfold of the magazines. He was just really out there. So here is Jack. And here's yours truly in the background, when that was a centerfold in one of the Uptime magazine. And so, the press just loved to blame Jack for something.
Right.
But he was such a fine, decent, smart person. I'm sure that in my basement I have a copy of the dictionary, because he would sit in the court with his ears like this. He went through the dictionary and he wrote down every word that he did not know. So he wrote that down. I have that in there. And he would study. He didn't want to hear what was going on. So he would sit there studying all the words. Now that's a little compulsive, but he has compulsiveness in his handwriting, yes.
Right.
Because he just wanted to keep learning.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating for me to hear all of this. Jack was not married? Or he was never
He was
married?
not married. I don't think he could find a woman who could keep up with him. I don't think so. Intellectually, socially, he just needed to do his own thing. He was so independent. As an empowered, creative person, he knew what he had, he used what he had, and then in the end, he gave it away. He said, this is what I want to do, this is what I believe in. And he went out and did it.
As a handwriting expert, what do you see in my handwriting?
Do I really get to talk about that?
Why not?
Yes, because I was so thrilled to meet you. Okay, now let me just show you what I have. You see how much bigger that is than Jack's handwriting? You see the speed?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Because
I'm an egotist, is that what you're saying?
no. I think you're very gifted with words. Jack had this very tiny, tight, introverted handwriting. He didn't want all this publicity. He did not ask for that. But when we look at your writing, we're looking at somebody who I describe as mentally gymnastic, which means that you can multitask. You can learn, you can listen, you can ignore, and then you can forget all of this.
We'll have to talk to my wife about that one, but go ahead.
Oh, okay, she'll probably agree with you. And then you have the unbelievable, it's what I call the dynamic triad. The dynamic triad is enthusiasm. Look at the way you cross your T-bar. You see that bold
Right.
T-bar in the word best?
Yeah.
But you can't get away. Is this Armenian? The bottom of the T will say you're stubborn. Okay, so you got that in common with Jack.
Right.
We have heavy pressure, which is depth of character. Look at the downstroke that you put on Yessian. My gosh. All right, can you get that farther down?
Yeah.
So you think it, you feel it, you do it. It's amazing piece of handwriting. I'll take a bigger one and put you into my visionary collection, because the visionary sees the invisible and does the impossible. I think that you share that with Jack. And then you see how fluid the writing is. That is the speed of your thinking. So I cherish this very, very much.
Well, I appreciate that. My last question for you. For those of us who have any religious background, the point of controversy comes up where is it for a human to decide, or is it for a higher power to decide? Did Jack ever broach that issue at all?
He put it all back to an individual right to decide how you live and how you die.
Was he a religious man?
I would describe Jack as spiritual, not religious, because he had great respect for great art, great music, great beauty, and things like that, great talent. So, religion, I guess Jung said is, it's almost mind control. But Jack said everyone needs to be free to make the decision in their lives.
Well, Ruth Holmes, I so appreciate being able to talk to you once again. This has been great. I know that people are going to be interested to hear all this, especially since it's been, did you say 11 and a half or 12 years that he passed away now?
June 3rd, this year, June 3rd, 2011, will mark the 12th year that Jack has died. He died at Beaumont Hospital 12 years ago.
Okay.
And I can only say, if you know the statement, the temple bells stop, but the sound keeps coming through the flowers. That was Jack.
Okay. Ruth Holmes, Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate it.